Okay, so did you have a prayer, some prayers that we do together to start? No, I forget. I'm doing so many different classes. I forget which one is which. So this one we don't do prayers.
I have some ready though. If you'd like to do the refuge and bodhicitta prayer, it's ready.
Well, we can just do some reflection and get ourselves into a good state of mind to start with. That's probably good enough. And then, yeah, I do have a screen share for when we do get started. So let's do some meditation to get ourselves into a good state of mind to start our class tonight. So make sure you're sitting comfortably. You can make a quick body scan to see if there's tension anywhere in your body. And if you do notice any tension, see if you can let it go. One way of doing that is to just put your awareness at that spot and just tell yourself to relax. Another effective way of releasing tension is when you inhale to imagine the air going to that place where there's tension and allowing it to release, relax, go away, disappear. And also just paying attention to the breath as it's flowing in and flowing out. That's also a helpful way of relaxing the mind and the body. So do that for a few moments. Just let your breathing be natural. Don't try to control it. And just with your mind, your awareness, be aware of the breath as it's flowing in and as it's flowing out. Do that for one breath after another. Notice any pauses in between each breath and halfway through each breath. Let your mind become free of thoughts of things you did during the day today or yesterday or any time in the past. Put aside those thoughts. And put aside any thoughts of the future, like plans for later tonight or tomorrow. Put aside thoughts of the past and the future and just let your mind be in the present moment with the breathing, aware of the breath as it's flowing in and flowing out. And now allow yourself to feel glad that you are breathing, that you are alive. So every day, every hour, every minute, there are people who stop breathing, whose life comes to an end. So each breath we take is very precious. From the Buddhist point of view, our life is precious, not because of all the pleasure and enjoyments we can have, but because of the potential that we have. So our mind has tremendous potential to develop wonderful states such as compassion and love and wisdom, generosity, patience. We have all of those qualities within us already, and we can nurture them, grow them, so they become greater, vaster, and eventually they can even become the qualities of an enlightened mind. So our mind has that potential to attain the same state the Buddha attained, a state of enlightenment or awakening, which is full of only positive qualities and completely free of all negative qualities like anger, greed, selfishness, ignorance, and so on. And we're very fortunate that we have the chance to learn the Buddhist teachings that explain how to do that, how to develop that potential of our mind. So we can at least start working on that, start increasing our positive qualities and decreasing the negative ones. Doing this is actually the best thing we could do for ourselves. The way to make ourselves truly, genuinely happy and peaceful, free of suffering and problems. And doing this work is also the best thing we can do for others and for the world. We can increase our own positive qualities. We have a better chance of influencing others and helping them to do the same. So if more and more people in the world could see the value of kindness and compassion, non-harmfulness, generosity, the world would be a very different place. Less war, fighting, killing, violence, harm to others. We would like to see such a world. We need to start with ourselves. So as the motivation for participating in this class, feel that wish to work on yourself, your own mind, developing your positive potential, positive qualities in your mind, decreasing the negative, harmful ones for the benefit of yourself, and others and the world. I'm sorry if that sounded too loud. I never know how it's going to sound when I hit it. So, so this is the, I think it's the fourth talk in this series. And I've made some kind of outline of some of the main points I'll be talking about, just so you can read those as I talk, and might make it easier to stay focused and remember what we're doing. So recently, no? Yeah, so last month here at Shrivasti Abbey, I gave a course on this very topic of awakening a kind heart. It was a weekend course. And I started off by talking about why we sometimes find it difficult to be kind. And I shared my own thoughts about that based on my own experience and what I've heard from others. And then some of the people in the group added their own ideas. So we came up with a list of causes for why it's hard to be kind sometimes. So we went through this, these points, and then I also gave some tips on what we could do if we do experience any of these problems. And I got the feedback afterwards that people found this very helpful. So I thought to share it with you as well. Because, we all want to be kind. I think everybody does see the value in being kind. And, we want to be kind. We try to be kind. But then sometimes we find it difficult. So could we have the screen share back? Yeah. So these are just things that I thought of as reasons why we find it hard to be kind. So one is personal suffering. So this could be physical or mental. So if we ourselves are in pain, for example, if we're sick, or even just hungry, cold, physically uncomfortable. Or if there's mental suffering, if we're feeling depressed, exhausted, and so on, or, there's things going on in our mind that are taking our attention. So when we're caught up in our own personal suffering, then at those times, then it can be hard to show kindness to others. So this is quite understandable. And I mean, there's nothing wrong with trying to relieve your suffering. So if you do have physical or mental suffering or both, it's fine to try to relieve that suffering. Go to the doctor if you need to, go to a therapist if you need to. So do whatever you need to do in order to relieve your own suffering. And if that's cleared away, then there will be more space in your mind to be able to pay attention to others and show kindness to others. But sometimes we do try to relieve our suffering, but it may not work. Yeah, the things we do may not always work, or they may take a while before they work. And so there may be times when the suffering is there. We can't just immediately make it go away. However, there's a way that we can use our suffering and transform that experience into kindness and compassion for others. So, for example, when we have suffering, when we're in pain physically or mentally, what happens is our mind tends to focus on and get completely preoccupied with my suffering. Yeah. And it's almost like we can't think of anyone or anything else. And this way that our mind deals with suffering actually makes it worse. If we keep focusing on my suffering, me, and I'm suffering so much, and oh, isn't this terrible? If we're getting obsessed, that's the word, obsessed with our own suffering, then the suffering seems to get bigger. It's like that expression, making a mountain out of a molehill. I mean, it may be great suffering, but by being obsessed with it, it seems to get even bigger, like huge, like a mountain. And then if that happens, then it can seem like unbearable, and it's like we're being crushed under this mountain of suffering, and we can't even breathe because we're suffering so much. So it may get like that. And so if we can observe our mind and notice what's happening, and notice that we are getting kind of obsessed with our suffering, then it can be helpful to do something about that. For example, remind yourself that everything is impermanent. Suffering, even suffering, is impermanent. It doesn't last forever. Yeah. So remembering impermanence could be helpful. You can imagine there'll be a time, maybe later today or tomorrow or next week or sometime in the future, when this suffering isn't there anymore. It'll be a thing of the past. So just reminding yourself of that it's not going to last forever, that might help to shrink this seemingly huge, unbearable, load of suffering. So that's something that could be helpful. Another thing that is helpful is to think about the suffering of others, to remind yourself, I'm not the only person in the world who's suffering. There's many other people as well. And many people have worse suffering than I do. Like right now, in Ukraine, you're probably all aware of what's happening to the people in Ukraine. Or homes and cities are being bombed and destroyed. They're afraid of their life. They have difficulty finding food and clean water, and incredible problems. So if you think about your suffering compared with the suffering of people like that, then it can seem much smaller, more like a molehill rather than a mountain. So these are just a few suggestions, but there's other things you can do with your mind that can help you to not be so caught up in your suffering and full of self-concern and maybe self-pity, and help you to see that your suffering isn't permanent, it's not going to last forever, and it's not that bad compared with what other people are experiencing. So if we work on that, on those kind of methods, then our suffering can become more manageable, and then we'll find more space in our mind to think of others and show kindness to others. So the next point is fear, anxiety. So what I thought about this was that let's say we see somebody who seems to need help, and we feel concern and the wish to help, but we may hold back because of fear or anxiety. We may think, I don't know what to do, or if I try to do something, maybe I'll do the wrong thing, I'll make a mistake, or maybe they won't want me to help them. So we may have all these kind of thoughts of, failing or doing the wrong thing or being rejected or whatever. And so that would hold us back from acting in response to our wish to help. So it's good to just be aware of these kind of thoughts. Notice what is happening in your mind. And then there are things we can do to work on our fears and our anxieties. If it's severe, if you have severe anxiety of this nature, then you might need help from a therapist to overcome that. And if it's not so severe, you might be able to just deal with it on your own. For example, sometimes just trying, putting your fears aside and just trying to go up to somebody and saying, do you need help? Can I help you? Then you might get a good response, and then that will give you some confidence that, yeah, you can be helpful for others. You can overcome this sort of fear and anxiety and do things that are helpful for others. I mean, that's very much my experience. When I was young, I was incredibly shy, and sometimes I would feel the wish to help people, but I would think, I don't know what to say. I don't know what to do. So I had this tremendous lack of self-confidence. But then over the years, especially learning Buddhism and practicing meditation and working with my mind, I have become more confident. And now, I don't have those problems anymore. Most of the time, I can go up and talk to complete strangers and, offer my help. And even if they don't respond positively, sometimes people, I've even heard stories, where you try to help somebody and they get angry. Some of you may have had that experience, but even if that happens, you don't have to let that bother you. You can just think, okay, so they don't want to be helped, but at least I offered to help, and that was a good thing to do. That was positive. So you can still feel good about your wish to help and your offer of help. And if they don't want your help, well, that's not your fault. Because I once heard the Dalai Lama say that whenever he meets people, he always smiles and greets them, shows friendliness. And he says most people smile back. Most people respond in the same way. They smile back and they are friendly back to him, but not everybody. He says sometimes people frown and look kind of like that. But he says, well, never mind. At least I feel good because I was smiling and I felt friendliness and showed friendliness. So, I feel good. If they don't feel good, well, what to do? So he doesn't let that bother him. So it's good to get to that point where somebody else's response, we can recognize, well, that's their business. Okay. It's not my fault if they respond that way. That's got to do with them. I mean, one thing I came to understand was that maybe people who are elderly or have some disability, they may really want to manage on their own. They want to be independent. They don't want to be helped by others. And so somebody coming up and offering to help them, they see that as a threat to the way they want to be, or an insult. Yeah. So that's got to do with their own mind if they react in that way. And yeah, that's, that's their thing, their problem. And yeah, at least we were ready to help, had the wish to help, offered to help. And if our help is refused, well, that's okay. I don't have to be upset about that. Okay, then the third one is being busy or stressed. So if we're very busy, we have a lot on our plate, deadlines and a huge amount of work to do, and we're feeling very stressed about all the things we have to do. So when we're in that mode of being, then it could be difficult to be kind to others. It's like we just don't have the space, the time to show kindness for others. So it could be good to just check, what are your priorities? What's really important? And if you're taking on so much work and letting yourself get so busy and so stressed that you can't be kind to others, then you need to check what's more important. Yeah. Because if you do treat others unkindly or just ignore them and, don't have any time and space to be kind, then how do you feel about yourself? How do you feel about your life? Is that the quality of life that you would like to have? Um, and so if you realize it is important to be kind, if that's a priority for you, then you might try to find ways to be less busy and less stressed so that you do have time to be kind. Yeah, it's very important, not only for others, but also for yourself. And then the fourth one is anger. So that's probably one of the main reasons why we may not be kind if we're angry. Yeah, we're angry at a person, then we may feel you don't deserve kindness, especially if that person has been harmful. If they've been harmful to us or they're harming others, then we feel angry at them and you think, well, you're being so mean and nasty and harmful to others. You don't deserve kindness. I'm not going to be kind to you. I'm not going to show you any kindness. And we may feel totally justified in that attitude. But it's good to think about that, to check, do a reality check on that. There's I read an article in I think it was Lion's Roar or in one of the Buddhist magazines a couple of years ago about this man. I think his name was Arno Michaelis, something like that. And in the earlier part of his life, he started off as a bully. When he was a kid, he started bullying other kids, and he really enjoyed the adrenaline rush that he got from scaring other kids. And then he graduated to being a neo-Nazi. He was like in this group that their way of being was hatred, racist and white supremacist, and just full of hate. And he started a music group that sang hate songs. They made hate music. And they got into fights with other groups. And that was his whole life. Hate, just full of hate. And he said that of course they would provoke other people. People would get angry at them, and when people got angry at them, that just fed their hatred. That didn't help. That just made them more angry. They liked making people upset and angry, and so they would just do it even more. So that made it very clear that responding with anger and hatred to somebody who is angry and hateful is not effective. It's just making things worse. And eventually this person turned around, and what happened was he got married and they had a child. And looking at his little child, his little girl, he thought, if I keep going the way I am, I'm either going to end up dead or in prison, and what will happen to her? And so that thought got him on the road, a different road. He started being more nice person. And then later, when his daughter was older, he found her one day reading a book about the Dalai Lama or something. Maybe there are children's books about the Dalai Lama. I don't know. But anyway, he was like, "What's that?" And then he started looking at it as well. And then that got him into Buddhism. And eventually he started going to a Buddhist center, learning meditation, practicing meditation. So he completely transformed. In fact, the title of the article was From Hate to Love. And yeah, so then he became a person who was an advocate for kindness and love and bridging the gap between different racial groups and so on and so forth. So he totally changed from the way he was when he was younger. But he said one of the things that helped him was people showing him kindness. So even when he was in that period of time when he was so full of anger and hatred and racism and so on, there were people who treated him with kindness, and that had an effect on him. Yeah, he noticed that, and probably slowly over time that got him to change and stop being so hateful and be more kind. So to me, that was just a very clear example of how if we can treat people, even people who are hateful and harmful themselves, if we can have a kind heart towards them, compassion towards them, then there's a greater chance of affecting them, influencing them, and helping them to change. So there's lots of remedies for anger, lots of things we can do to work on our anger. There's books, whole books about anger. For example, a book called Working with Anger by Venerable Thupten Chodron, and one by the Dalai Lama called Healing Anger. So if you do have a problem with anger, then read those books and practice. Work on the methods. They definitely do work. It takes time. You do have to put energy into it, but it's so beneficial because anger is so painful. It's painful for you, and it's also painful for other people, the people you get angry at. So it's really worth working on and learning to manage. And then arrogance, the next one. So arrogance is pride, conceitedness. So towards certain individuals, we may feel superior, and that could cause us to treat them, in an unkind way, almost like it's beneath me to associate with such people. And so if we have that kind of attitude of superiority, looking down on other people, then that would block us from being kind, showing them kindness. So this is one of the afflictions in Buddhism that we need to look out for and be honest. If it is there in our mind, if that attitude does arise in our mind, it doesn't help to ignore it, deny it, pretend that it's not there. Be honest. Be honest that it is an attitude in your mind and work on overcoming it. So there's different methods for working on arrogance, such as just reminding ourselves of our shortcomings, our faults, our mistakes, instead of focusing only on our good qualities and our accomplishments and our achievements and so on, and feeling proud about that. But just remembering, well, I'm not perfect, and I may be good at that, but I'm not good at that. And other people are good at that. And so that can really help us to be more humble. I've also realized I used to get really annoyed with people who appeared proud and arrogant. That really irritated me. And then it occurred to me that people who have pride and arrogance, I think it's just a front. it's a cover-up. And deep inside, they're actually insecure. Yeah, they lack confidence. And so they're putting on this false front of being, so full of confidence to the point where they actually look arrogant. But I think deep down inside, they're really scared. They're, yeah, not confident in themselves at all. So when I realized that, then it helped me to not be so annoyed at them and instead feel compassion. Because I look at the Dalai Lama, for example, and he doesn't show the least bit of arrogance, in spite of the fact that he's such an important person, and so many people respect him. And when he gives public talks, there's tens of thousands or 100,000 people who come, listening to him. So he's incredibly popular. But he doesn't show the least bit of pride or arrogance. He's totally humble, down to earth, and I think it's because he has confidence. Yeah, he's not scared. He's not shy. He knows himself very well. He knows his mind very well. He doesn't need to put on any kind of show of being superior or proud or arrogant. And so I really admire that. I really admire people who are humble, genuinely humble. Trying to be that way myself. Okay, yeah. So if we are humble, like again, the Dalai Lama, he's genuinely humble and he's incredibly kind. Yeah, when he's with a crowd of people, he'll reach out and hug people and shake their hands and show them attention, give them attention. So, yeah. So with more humility, we'll be able to be more kind and helpful for others. Okay, the next one is self-centeredness and attachment. So self-centeredness is, feeling I'm the most important one of all. I am the center of the universe. We've talked about that before. We all have it. We all have this self-centered attitude. And again, we have to recognize it, acknowledge it. Don't pretend that it's not there. If it is there, acknowledge it and work on it. And I added to this attachment because, in some cases, because of self-centeredness, we have a lot of desires, a lot of ambitions, a lot of things we want to do for me, for myself, for my needs, my wishes. And if we're totally caught up in our own desires and attachments, then that can cause us to be unkind to others. We see anybody who's in my way, we push them aside, or we may even harm them. So if we're really so caught up in ourself and our wishes and our needs and our desires, then in that mode of being, we can sometimes be unkind to others. So that's something to look at. I remember this one very gross example of this some years ago, because my family live in Oregon, and so I'm visiting my family, and there was this one skater, a woman ice skater from Oregon. I think her name was Tanya something, and she was competing for the Olympics. And there was another skater who she saw as a rival somehow. And this other skater, I think her name was Nancy something, one day she was attacked. A man, came up to her. I think she was actually skating or leaving the skating rink or whatever. A man came up to her and hit her in the leg with a very hard object so that her leg was injured. And I don't know if they ever, figured out who did it, but there was strong suspicion that this attack was initiated by the other skater, the one from Oregon, Tanya something or other. So it just looked really ugly. You know, it looked as if she was jealous. She was, you know, in this mode of wanting to be the best herself and seeing the other skater as a rival that she had to get out of the way in order to achieve her own ambitions. So I don't know if that was ever proven, but there was strong suspicion that was the case, that she was behind this nasty attack. But there's lots of stories like that of people who, you know, in order to achieve their own goals just for themselves, they're willing to even do harmful things to others. So look out for that. And important to remember the benefits of kindness. And anything we do that's unkind and harmful, we're going to pay for it eventually. We can't really feel good about ourselves if we treat others harmfully or disrespectfully, especially with such a ugly motivation, just my achievement, getting what I want. Yeah. So you won't really feel good about yourself if you behave in that way. Okay, the next point is negative influence from others. So we are very much influenced by the people we spend time with, friends, family, and so on. So if we hang out with people who are unkind, you know, who like to gossip, for example, tell nasty stories about people behind their backs, do play nasty tricks on people and so on. So if we hang out with people who are unkind, then we may find ourselves being influenced by them and, you know, starting to have thoughts of being unkind ourselves. So that's why it's so important. They say in the spirit, in the teachings, in the Dharma, that if we want to practice the Dharma, we should really associate with people who are on this path themselves and who are working to cultivate these positive qualities, and you know, they'll have a good influence on us. And try to not spend so much time with people who have a negative influence on you. Okay, the last point is mistaken concepts about kindness and altruism. So I've heard that, like the first point under that says human beings are by nature selfish, aggressive, greedy, and competitive, and we only help others when it's good for us. So there's a book called The Art of Happiness, written by Howard Cutler, a psychologist, and he's having discussions with the Dalai Lama about happiness. And he brings up different kind of issues that Western people are concerned about. And so in that book, he mentions this, that, you know, for a long time, Western science and philosophy and psychology and sociology and so on had this view. This was the predominant view about human beings, that human beings, our nature is like this. We're selfish, we're aggressive, we're greedy, we're competitive, and we don't, you know, we are not by nature kind and compassionate. And when we do things to help others, it's only because we're going to get something out of it. So even our acts of kindness are really just, you know, motivated selfishly. There's an ulterior motivation. So some people in your education, you may have been exposed to this idea and you may have bought into it and believe in it. And so you don't really value kindness and compassion. You may think these are not authentic qualities. People are just out for themselves, and even if they act in a kind way, it's only for an ulterior motivation. So if you have that kind of view, you know, if you believe that, then you would not value kindness. You would not see kindness and compassion as valuable qualities to practice in your life. So instead you would have this very cynical attitude. So yeah, so this could be an obstacle to being kind. You don't believe in it. You don't see it as something genuine, valuable. And the second point here is some people may think that it's not beneficial to be kind because other people will use me and walk all over me. So this is another idea that some people have. They think if I treat others with kindness and compassion, then they will, they'll use me and walk all over me, and I'll find myself losing out. So I think that there's a fear there. That's, a fear-based idea, being afraid of showing kindness and compassion for others because of, then I will suffer. I will be used by others. Some people might even think kindness and compassion are stupid. You're stupid to be kind and compassionate. People will use you. Well, I think there's one mistake here, and that is that some people might think that being kind and compassionate means you always have to say yes. Every time somebody asks you for something or they ask you to do something, you can never say no. You always have to say yes. I'm kind of like that myself, actually. Very hard for me to say no. But that's not the meaning of kindness. Being kind doesn't mean always agreeing to everybody's requests. Okay, it's fine to say no if we feel that their request is unreasonable, if we are not able to do it, if we're exhausted. Okay, so if we have valid reasons for saying no to somebody's request, then it's fine to say no, and we can still do it with a kind heart. I mean, it's like with parents. Some of you are probably parents, and your children ask you for all kinds of things. Buy me this. I want that. Let me do this. And I think you should know, hopefully, that it's not good for the child to always say yes, to agree to every request that they make. Then they get spoiled and they don't learn how to be independent, manage on their own. If you do their homework for them, how are they ever going to learn themselves to, take care of themselves? So, so in the case of parents with children or teachers with students, then it's not good to always say yes. You do have to sometimes say no, put your foot down and be firm, but you can still do that with a kind heart, with kindness and compassion. So I think that, that point is really not valid, that being kind will lead to being used by others, people walking all over you. You can be firm, say no, stand your ground, but still do it with a kind heart. Okay, so those are some things to look out for that can be an obstacle to kindness. There may be others as well that I haven't thought of, but yeah, it's just good to explore that. Excuse me. If you do ever find it difficult to show kindness, it's good to step back from your mind and your experience and investigate what's going on here. What's blocking me from acting in a kind way? And so you might discover things about yourself you may not have noticed before. And there's always things we can do. There are always remedies we can use to overcome whatever obstacles there are. And then the next heading there is how to increase kindness. So these are things we can do to have more kindness, to bring more kindness into our mind and into our life. So the first one is mindfulness and introspective awareness. So mindfulness here means just knowing what we're doing with our body and our speech and our mind, because that could be one reason for unkindness. Sometimes we might say something or do something without full mindfulness, and somebody else might be hurt by what we do and what we say. And so if we can have more mindfulness, more awareness of our actions and our speech and also our thoughts, then that can help us to avoid doing things that are hurtful, harmful, or unkind. Mindfulness, having more mindfulness will help. And also, mindfulness will help us to be more aware of others. So, if somebody else is in a vulnerable space or feeling hurt or feeling anxious or whatever, if we're really mindful, we'll notice that. And then that will help us recognize that, oh, this person needs help, and we'll be more likely to go up to them and ask if there's something we can do. So mindfulness is a very important tool or state of mind for having more kindness. And introspective awareness, this is another mental factor. It's kind of close to mindfulness, but it's compared to a spy in the sense that it helps us recognize when there is something in our mind that could lead us to be unkind. For example, anger. Okay. Introspective awareness is what enables us to recognize if there's anger or arrogance or anxiety or whatever's going on in our mind that could be a block, an obstacle to kindness. Okay, so it's kind of an inner spy. It's not spy in a negative way, but yeah, a monitor, you could say. Being able to monitor our thoughts and our feelings and recognize if there is something going on inside of us that could be an obstacle to kindness. And then if we do notice that, then we can pay attention to that and work on it, find ways of dealing with it. And then the second point here is learning how to counteract the afflictions that interfere with kindness. So I mentioned a few, like anger and arrogance, selfishness, attachment. So if we notice these happening in our mind and want to be more kind, want to clear those out of the way so that we can be more kind, there are antidotes, there are methods we can use. This is a long-term project, working on our afflictions. We could easily spend our whole life, the rest of our life, working on our afflictions, but it's very worthwhile because afflictions, mental distortions, mental delusions like anger, attachment, and so on, they're painful. They are the cause of suffering. And so learning to work on them, to reduce them, decrease them, manage them is good for ourselves. It will enable us to be more peaceful and happy and less likely to hurt others. And then the third point is read or listen to teachings on kindness. Okay, so if we listen to teachings or we read books that talk about how important it is to be kind and how to be kind, then we'll be inspired. Yeah, we'll feel influenced and inspired to be that way ourselves. Yeah, so really make a point of doing that every day if possible, even just for 5 minutes. Expose yourself to some kind of information, some kind of resource that will remind you of the importance of kindness. And then the next one is associate with kind people. Yeah, so I mean, you can probably see it clearly in your experience when you're with people who are kind, who act in a kind way. It rubs off. You find yourself being more kind as well. So if you do really want to have more kindness in your mind and in your life, then hang out with the people that will help you to do that. And the next point, make wise choices regarding media and entertainment. Yeah, so some of the resources, movies, TV, music, and even things like news, and internet, books, and things we read, and so on. So some of those sources of news or entertainment might have an effect on us such that we become less kind and more angry and more aggressive. So watch out for that. You can just watch your own mind and what kind of effect certain media have on your mind. And if you notice that they are decreasing your kindness and increasing your anger or despair or depression or whatever, then maybe don't pay so much attention to those sources and try to find other sources. There are websites that have good news. I don't, yeah, yeah. So look for those kind of sources, TV, movies, entertainment, music, news sources, and so on, that encourage positive thoughts and feelings, feeling positive, feeling optimistic, feeling joyful, feeling kind and compassionate. So try to, make wise choices. And then meditate on loving kindness. So the last point is, even just a few minutes a day, especially in the morning at the start of the day, do some kind of practice. Yeah. Even just the prayer of the four measurables that we've been looking at. It's easy to memorize. It's very short, easy to memorize. So read it or recite it from heart, from memory, and just spend a few minutes contemplating those beautiful thoughts. And then think, today, with the people that I meet, may I show them kindness and compassion and do the very best that I can to help them and not do anything harmful to them. So some kind of practice like that. The more we do, the more will that quality increase, kindness and compassion and so on. Okay, so then I want to go on to the next of the four immeasurable thoughts, which is sometimes it's just called joy, but perhaps a more accurate term is empathetic joy, or some say sympathetic joy. So this is expressed in the line of the prayer of the four immeasurables, saying, may all beings never be separated from the happiness that is free from suffering. And so this state of mind wants others to be happy and is happy when they are happy. Okay, so it's actually when we share in the joy of others, feeling happy when others are happy. So when we are happy, when good things are happening to us, things are going well in our life, we feel happy about that. We really enjoy that. So ideally, we should feel that about others as well. When others are happy, healthy, experiencing success, things are going well in their life, then ideally we should share in that joy. We should be happy for them. I mean, we do anyway. This is a state of mind that we do experience For example, with somebody we love, somebody we care about, like if you're a parent and your child comes home from school and they're really happy because they've just made a new friend, or they got invited to some party, or they got their report card and they got really good grades, or their teacher praised them. So something good happened to them and they're really happy. They're really excited. So you love your child. You want your child to be happy. And so when you see that they are happy, you're happy too. You share in their happiness. So that's this state of mind, this quality of empathetic joy. And the second point says it's based on loving kindness. So loving kindness means wishing others to be happy. And so if we really genuinely feel that way, if we really do want others to be happy, then when they are happy, we should be happy too. That's what we've been wanting, wishing for, praying for. So ideally, we should be happy. However, that doesn't always happen. Sometimes we don't feel happy about others' happiness, and instead we feel envy or jealousy or resentment. We'll look at that later. But anyway, I'm just trying to explain what empathetic joy is. And it's a positive state of mind. It's a virtuous state of mind. Yeah. So when we can feel this way, when we can feel happy for the happiness of others, then we're creating good karma, positive karma. And that means we're creating the cause to have even more happiness in the future. So this is something we experience just spontaneously, naturally at certain times, but we don't always have it. And so there are obstacles to this state of mind. The far enemy, meaning the opposite state of mind, is jealousy, envy, resentment. So I'm sure we all do feel that way sometimes. Your neighbor gets a nice new car, and it's all, shiny and beautiful and really fancy or whatever, and they're really happy about their new car. And maybe you try to smile and say, wow, that's a great new car you've got. But inside in our heart, we're feeling not so happy because maybe we would like that kind of car too, but maybe we can't afford it. So we do feel that way sometimes. And just a little later, I'll talk about some ways we can deal with that, how we can deal with that state of mind. But that's the main obstacle to empathetic joy. It's the total opposite to empathetic joy. And then there are some near enemies. So near enemies are states of mind that look similar to empathetic joy, but they're not quite the right thing. Okay, so the first one is exhilaration, and this is self-centered pleasure. So, for example, when things are going well for us, or something wonderful has happened for us, and we're feeling really happy, really excited, that's not empathetic joy. Empathetic joy is about the happiness of others, being happy for others, good fortune, success, and so on and so forth. But when it's our own happiness and good fortune and success and so on, and we're happy about that, that's not empathetic joy. Now, that doesn't mean it's wrong. There's something wrong with being happy when good things are happening for us. It's fine to be happy about our own happiness and success. But sometimes, we get attached. There's often a sense of attachment, and we're just so preoccupied with ourself. And so that's that's the meaning of this particular state of mind. So this is not empathetic joy. This is just being exhilarated about our own wonderful experiences and successes and so on and so forth. The second one is insincerity. So this would be, we may pretend to be happy over another person's success, but inside, secretly, we're feeling unhappy. We're feeling jealous. Yeah. So in a way, we're kind of suppressing or hiding our real feelings of jealousy and then just pretending to be happy. Now, that doesn't mean we should show our jealousy. It doesn't mean that, we should just blurt out, well, I'm really jealous of you. I'm really unhappy that this has happened to you. That wouldn't be right. That wouldn't be nice. Okay. But so it is better to put a smile on our face, congratulate them, and say something about how happy we are. But we should be honest. If there is jealousy, envy, resentment in our mind, we should be honest about that. And then as soon as we can, do some kind of practice, some kind of meditation to deal with that, and not just let that remain in our mind, eating away at our mind. Yeah. So show happiness, show, that we're happy for the other person's success, but then don't just deny or hide or run away from the jealousy. Work on that. And then the next one is joy about somebody's unethical action. Okay, so if they robbed a bank, for example, and they were successful in robbing the bank, they got away with it, and they're just really happy about all this money that they managed to steal. So it wouldn't be appropriate to be happy about that, because that's a negative action. They did something that's negative, unethical. Yeah. So there's one practice we do in Buddhism called rejoicing. It's part of our practice, where we think of the virtue that others have done, and we rejoice in all the virtue that is done by others, but also ourselves. So we rejoice in virtue. So we should, when it comes to rejoicing, we should only rejoice in virtuous actions, but not in non-virtuous actions. This does happen sometimes. Like, for example, when there's a war, like right now with Ukraine and Russia, we have to be very careful when there's a war, because we tend to take sides. We tend to favor one side over the other. And so when our side, the side that we are rooting for, if they, kill or destroy something from on the side of the enemy, and we feel happy about that, we think, yay, great, they got those nasty so-and-sos. That's actually non-virtuous. If we rejoice, feel happy about actions that are harmful, like killing, stealing, and so on, then that's negative. We're creating negative karma. Or if there's a criminal, a murderer or a rapist, and that person gets executed, often people are outside the prison cheering, yay, he got what he deserved. That's very negative. So we have to be careful about that, because we're creating bad karma. That's negative karma. Okay, so we have to feel joy about good things, virtuous things, positive things, but not about negative things that are done. Okay, so hopefully that makes it clear what this state of mind is, empathetic joy. So now the main obstacle to this is envy. So if we do notice that in our mind, if there's envy or jealousy, be honest about it. Don't deny it. It's not going to go away by denying it. So we do have to acknowledge its existence. And then it can be helpful to analyze it, to do some investigation. So these are some of the questions we can ask ourselves. Is this a pleasant feeling? Yeah. Does it feel good to have envy, or is it painful? So hopefully you will recognize that it doesn't feel good. It's painful. It's very painful. Yeah. So that can help, to then say, I don't want to feel this way. This is a yucky feeling. I want to get rid of this. And then second question, is it selfish or altruistic? And hopefully we'll recognize, yeah, it's really selfish. It's about me. Yeah, I'm just thinking about myself because I don't have that shiny, beautiful new car like my neighbor has. So poor me. So that blocks us from being able to think about that person's happiness or having this nice new car. So if we can recognize that it's oriented to me, just me, then that hopefully will help us to want to get out of that state of mind. Another question is it permanent or impermanent? So permanent means like always there, every minute, every second, never goes away. Impermanent means sometimes there, sometimes not. So we can just look at our experience and ask ourselves, do I always feel envy every minute, every second, 24/7? Is that something that's always there in my mind? Or is it something that's sometimes there, sometimes not? So we'll probably recognize that it's not permanent. It's not always there. It comes and goes. And there are times we don't feel it. So that's helpful. I don't know about you, but for me, it's really helpful to recognize that. This isn't a permanent state. It's a transitory state. It comes and goes. It's not me. It's not who I am. It's more like a passing mental state, a passing phenomena in my mind, transitory. And that means we can have power over it. We can control it rather than being controlled by it, being under its control. So that's kind of related to the next one. Is it who I am or just a transitory mental state? I'm sure we can all find times when we don't feel envy, and instead we are able to sincerely rejoice, feel joyful about another person's success, good qualities, good experiences. I'm sure we can all find such experiences in our mind. And that means we are capable of that kind of state. We are capable of being free of envy, free of jealousy, and sincerely happy for someone else's success. Okay, so we have those experiences, and we can have them more often if we work on it. Okay, so the next point, this is just something that I found because I feel jealousy sometimes, and so this one says, if I was in the other person's place, would I really be 100% happy? So this is helpful for me because when I feel jealous of somebody else, and I imagine, so what if I was that person? If I did have what that person has, would I be happy? Would I be totally 100% happy all the time. This is what we imagine. We sort of fantasize that if we could only be that other person, have what that other person had, everything would be wonderful. Everything would be perfect. Everything would be ideal. I wouldn't have any more problems. This is kind of what our mind is saying. So it's good to check that. Is that really true? Because for one thing, that person probably has problems. It probably isn't the case that everything in that person's life is wonderful and fantastic. So if you were to trade places with that person, then you'd have to have their problems as well. Not just their successes and their good things, but their problems too. So that can be helpful to realize that, a person isn't 100% perfect and everything is perfect in their life. But also another thing that I come to realize is if I have this attitude of envy, jealousy, and I'm looking at somebody else and wishing I had what they had, then I think even if I did have what they have, what then? Would I really be happy? Or would I maybe just be happy for a while and then eventually I'd find somebody else who has more and better, and then I would want what they have. Again, envy, jealousy would come up, and I would be dissatisfied with what I have, and I would want that. Like this expression, the grass is always greener on the other side. It's like, no matter how much we have, we can always find somebody who has more. And if we let our mind go in that direction, we'll never be happy. We'll never be satisfied. We'll always see somebody else who's got something more, better that we would want. And so it's like an endless cycle. So for me, that way of thinking is very helpful. And then that leads to the next point is, can I be grateful for and content with what I have? So how about just looking at what you do have and being happy with that? Yeah, I have quite a lot going for me. My life's pretty good. And if I can be grateful for what I have and content with what I have, that's real happiness. That's genuine happiness, not always wanting more, always wanting better. So if you go through these points and contemplate them, you might get to the point where you can do the last one. Can I at least try to feel happy for the other person? Because they do say that the antidote to envy or jealousy is to be happy for the other person rather than jealous. But it's hard to just completely switch from envy to rejoicing or joy. That's just like 180 degrees. So if you go through these other points, you contemplate those other points, that might help you to get your mind into a state where you see it just makes sense to be happy for the other person rather than jealous. And if I can at least try to do that, just say to myself, I'm happy for them. It's really wonderful that they have this nice new car or that they won this prize or whatever it is. Just say those words to yourself. Try to feel that way. And you'll probably notice it's a much better way of thinking and a much better way of feeling than jealousy and envy. It feels more, this is the way I want to be. So even if it's not 100% genuine at that point in time, it's more like, this is where I want to go. This is how I want to be. So let's at least try. Like that expression, fake it till you make it. So initially it's maybe a bit fake, a bit false, a bit forced. But if you keep getting familiar with this way of thinking and this way of feeling, then eventually it becomes more natural, more spontaneous, more genuine. And then it will even start to arise by itself without having to force yourself to think this way. So, yeah, and then finally there's this meditation on joy. We don't have time to do it, but you could try it on your own. So sit down, calm yourself down, and put yourself into a state of mind of feeling loving kindness. For example, just saying to yourself how wonderful it would be if all beings could be happy. And then bring to mind individual people, starting with people you already like and care for. And then focus on each person and say to yourself these words, or you can change the words if you want. Just think, I'm happy that you are happy. May your happiness continue. May your happiness increase. May your good fortune shine. So those are suggested words or phrases, but you can play around with that and make your own. And then, yeah, gradually bring in other people, easy people to start with, and then maybe a little more difficult people. And the more we get familiar with this way of thinking, eventually we can even feel happy for people we normally would feel jealous or envious towards. So finally, there's this quote from the Dalai Lama. I don't remember where I got it from, but it's quite nice. He says, there are 7 billion people. Well, now it's more. I don't know how many there are now, but anyway, however many people there are in the world, there are that many opportunities for us to be happy. So this is what he means. If we can be happy for those people, for their joy and their happiness and their success and their good qualities and their good things they're doing, then we can be happy. It's an easy way to be happy. It's an easy way to bring happiness into your mind by rejoicing in the happiness of others. Okay, there's a few minutes left. If anyone has a question. So somebody...
Yes, go ahead, Christine. Go ahead.
Oh, Christine, yeah? You have to unmute yourself. Don't hear you.
Christine, it may be your headset because there you go.
Okay. I don't have a question, Venerable. I just want to thank you. It was very meaningful and informative to me, and I just want to thank you.
I'm glad to be of help. Yeah, because like I say, I've struggled with envy and jealousy and know how painful it is and how nice it is to have remedies, methods you can use to free yourself from such painful feelings.
There's a question in the chat, Venerable, from Matt. How do you see it? Go ahead. Yes. Perfect.
How to deal with overwhelm as a barrier to kindness? Overwhelm. being overwhelmed. I'm not sure what that means. Overwhelm of someone suffering. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, then we need to do some things to deal with that. I think I talked about that last time in the talk on compassion. I'm not sure if I did or not, but what I remember is just some ideas from Buddhism that can help remembering impermanence, how things are impermanent, like I mentioned earlier today. Suffering isn't something that's going to last forever. It's transitory. It comes and goes. So, for example, this war that's happening now, I mean, we hope it will end soon. We have no idea when it will end, but eventually it will end. All wars, you know, the most horrific wars, World War II, World War I, Vietnam War. I mean, they're horrible, but they eventually come to an end. And so reminding ourselves of that whatever terrible things there are, whatever suffering there is, it will come to an end. It won't last forever. So that can help us to not be overwhelmed. And another idea may be that, you know, suffering, horrible things, we don't want them to happen, but they can sometimes bring about beneficial results. Like just today in the Abbey, for the pre-lunch little talk, one of the Abbey residents was talking about something positive that has come out of the COVID pandemic, in that jobs, like there's a great need now for labor. I don't understand why that is, but a lot of companies are desperately trying to find people to fill jobs, and they're taking ex-convicts, inmates. They're actually even going into prisons and offering programs, re-entry programs for prisoners who are going to be released soon, and offering them jobs. And this is so beneficial for the inmates, because otherwise many people, they're ready to leave prison, and their prospects, I mean, they like, who's going to hire me? I'm a convict with my record. Nobody's going to hire me. How will I survive? How will I support myself? So they have a lot of fear and anxiety about going back into the world. So this is bringing tremendous benefit to people in prisons, as well as filling the need for these jobs. So this is all one of the results of COVID and the pandemic and so on. So yeah, so even something terrible can happen. In one sense, yeah, it's terrible, but in another sense, there can be good that comes of it. And there's lots of stories too about people who get cancer, or they have other tragic things happening in their life, but then they learn from it. They grow from it. Good things can come out of it. So suffering isn't always a bad thing. It can have some beneficial results. So contemplating that can also help to not be so upset by or overwhelmed by suffering. And compassion, I mean, the Dalai Lama says, if you can generate compassion, compassion gives courage. So if you can have more compassion in your mind, then that will enable you to feel more strong, more courageous, even in the face of suffering. But it does take time to contemplate these points and get familiar with them and get to where they work for you. Yes, but yeah, there's a lot, I find a lot in the Buddha's teachings that really do help avoid feelings of despair or overwhelm about suffering. But yeah, if you are overwhelmed, then you also may need to take time for yourself. Take care of yourself. Get help for yourself. Do whatever you need to strengthen your courage and your compassion. Because sometimes we feel like we have to keep pushing ourselves to do more and more and more and more for others. And in the meantime, we get exhausted and worn out. So we also need to take care of ourselves and our own needs to be able to help others with their needs. Okay, so we'll stop there and let's just take a few moments to dedicate the positive energy of spending this time together looking at this very beautiful topic of kindness and empathetic joy and so on. So we started off with a good motivation, altruistic motivation, and then we made the effort to stay focused, think, reflect on, generate these positive thoughts in our mind. So we definitely created some good energy, some good use of our time. And so let's share this positive energy with all other beings. May it bring peace and happiness and freedom from suffering and the causes of suffering to all beings everywhere, and may it help all of us get closer to enlightenment. Okay, thank you.